Hey everyone, Old School Pokemon here, back again with podcast episode number 2 with my co-host KetchumAllCollectibles, Dan. How are you doing tonight, Dan?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm doing good. So, the first podcast episode that we uploaded back a couple of weeks ago now. There was a lot of good comments with that podcast. A lot of people seem to enjoy that. So, like we mentioned within that previous podcast, I'm going to try and do these episodes at least once a month. We'll try and get the first couple out maybe every couple weeks or so, but we'll see what our schedule looks like. But anyway, for tonight's episode, we're going to be talking about the PSA shutdown and the state of grading. But before we hop into that, we do have two questions from last week's episode. If you guys have a question that you want us to talk about within the next podcast, leave it down below in the comments. And as we get more people asking questions within each podcast, we'll kind of pick out the best few questions to answer at the beginning of the following podcast. But for this first one, we only have two questions, so we'll go ahead and answer them both. First question is from Swami. He says, I'd like to know what your goals are for your businesses, just a 2021 goal or XYZ in 2 years type of thing. He also asks, what's a fun Pokemon memory that you have? I've never gone to a Worlds or anything, but I imagine an event like that would be fun. You want to start us off, Dan?
Yeah, sure. So, my biggest goal for this year, I would have to say, is just organization. I think that's been a goal of mine for every year that I've been in the hobby, because what I do is I just buy and buy and buy, and I never get through. I'll buy a large collection, not get through it all, but take what I want, kind of flip some profit out of it, and then move on to the next one. But something we might talk about in a future podcast is actually different selling platforms. And one thing I've done a real big focus on the past month or so, especially, is outsourcing a little bit. PWCC is out there. I'm sure a lot of people know Consignment House. They had quite the promotion for March. So I sent a lot of my inventory to them to be stored for free for however long. It can be auctioned whenever I want. Another thing I'm really utilizing to advance my organization is Troll and Toad Evo, which again we'll get into it. But anyone who's bought from Troll and Toad, they'll see Evo merchants. It's kind of like a fulfillment by Amazon. Think about it that way. So that's my biggest business side goal. And then I guess collecting side, I'm transitioning a lot of my collection out of graded and into binders. So that kind of ties right into organization too. Just consolidating and organizing my collection, going through, making sure I'm happy with all the cards in my binders, and then filling any holes. And so that's the biggest thing for my goals. I guess if you want to talk about your goals, Nick, and then we'll go back to our memories.
Yeah, sounds good. I'd have to agree with you there about organization. It's definitely tough to keep everything organized when you have a larger inventory. That's definitely one of my kind of short term goals, I guess. Something that I've been doing past couple weeks, and hopefully you'll finish up in the next couple weeks or so. Trying to get a count of everything that I actually have. So create spreadsheets of all the commons, uncommons that I actually have available, so I can kind of reference those numbers to make updating my eBay inventory a little bit easier. But aside from that, my biggest goal for this year is obviously trying to make going full time with eBay work. This will be a real exciting year to see if I'm able to make it work or whatnot. See how much I'm able to make on eBay going a full year versus just 3-4 months here and there. So I'm really excited for that. so far it's working out really good, but hopefully it continues throughout the year. But that's definitely my biggest goal for the year is to just hopefully turn this into something that I can continue to do full time. And then collection goals right now, I'm adding on to my No Damage Ninetales collection. I don't know if you saw Z&G Emporium's video where he showed off a No Damage Ninetales that he recently bought.
I meant to ask you about that. Yeah, I did see that.
I actually bought that off of him. And then a day before that, actually, I had someone reach out to me who I met at the Collecticon event in Dallas. He had a PSA 7 No Damage Ninetales, and we couldn't come to an agreement at the event. But then he just sent me a Facebook message the other day, and I bought that copy off of him. So I've got the PSA 7 and then James's raw copy coming in. So that'll be nice to have those. And then the only other big collection goal that I have right now is I really want to try and buy a Legendary Collection and Skyridge theme deck display case, but I don't know if that'll ever happen. We'll see.
Those are tough. Yeah.
I haven't seen any of those in the longest time.
Do you have the individual decks or no?
Yeah, no, I got the individual decks for both sets.
Okay.
At some point, I would like to buy the sealed case because that's really the last two that I need to have my complete set.
Yeah. Nice.
But I don't even know what those things would be worth, and with the pricing we have today, even the individual decks are real expensive.
Oh yeah, I remember years ago I had a lava, and at the time it was crazy expensive at a few $100, and I don't even know what it is now.
I think I want to say they're like 2 or 2,500, 2,000, 2,500 somewhere.
Yeah, that sounds right.
But to answer the next part of the question, what's a fun Pokemon memory that you have? I would have to go with both the 2019 Worlds event, which that's where we met in person for the first time. That was a lot of fun. That was my first Worlds event that I actually attended. And then the Collecticon event in Dallas back a couple weeks ago. That was a lot of fun as well. I really enjoyed just being able to meet up with all different collectors that you talk to, and just be able to meet up and talk in person. Makes for a fun time for sure.
Yeah.
What would you have to say for that answer?
I'm right on the same page with you. The in-person events are really cool. I actually made it down to 2018 as well, and I did a really quick trip for that one. I did like 24 hours, didn't get a hotel room, just hung out until my plane left at 6 a.m. the next morning. That was a lot of fun. Really, really interesting because at 2018, I'd been back in the hobby for a few years, but I'd not really met anyone. But I had so many like bonds and friendships and business relationships too, through E4, through eBay, and putting a face to all those names, meeting the people was really fun. 18 and 19 Worlds, and then I went to that collector's event in Hartford. And then another thing that's not so much a memory, but like I guess it's ongoing memories. My son, he's turning 3 this summer, and he loves all this stuff. He'll come down here and he'll start pointing at all the Pokemon and naming them, and he watches the show, and he's got the Build-A-Bear stuffed animals, and making memories with him with the franchise is one of the best things for sure.
Oh, that's awesome! That's awesome right there. Yeah, hopefully one of these days he'll be able to be your little helper with eBay.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And get everything organized.
I see Rusty post those videos occasionally on his Instagram where his daughters are helping, and my kids are on their way, I'm sure.
There we go. Get some free labor out of them.
Yeah.
So the next question we got is from Shiny Typhoon 96. Love the content as always. Great job. Maybe part of the podcast could include updates on the current status of buying and selling at the time of each podcast. So that's actually something we talked about before starting this podcast, was to kind of begin each episode with what we've been kind of like a highlight reel of what we've been buying and selling, or either or whatever. So we'll definitely continue to do that within each podcast going forward. But so great idea there. You wanna start us off there?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I could mention one shipment I made today. I've kind of been selling a lot of my spare ETBs, and one thing I'm selling that Nick's buying, he bought some ETBs from me to work towards his collection. So that checks off a couple boxes on both ends.
Oh, for
Other
sure.
things I'm selling are really just extra graded card inventory, part of my organization, just selling off a lot of duplicates. Like I said, consolidating down. As far as buying goes, I'm actually I feel kind of crazy seeing some of these fossil box prices and even occasionally jungle box prices. I did pick up a fossil first edition box the last PWCC night. Interestingly, I didn't get one from that auction, but I got an auction that ended during PWCC that just didn't have as many eyes on it.
Smart move.
So I opened that recently because it feels like the EV on them feels positive, and maybe it's not going to work out, but it was a fun experience. I cracked a lot of boxes a few years ago, and I haven't done one in a couple years now, at least. So I gave that a shot with PSA grading the packs now with an actual good case for the packs. I kind of wanted to give those a try, so I sent out a lot of the light packs to go with that. Other things I'm buying, I'm trying to buy, like I know you buy a lot of bulk collections, raw stuff. I picked up a pretty nice one recently that was mid-era. A lot of EX series hollows, reverse hollows, heart gold, soul silver, diamond and pearl, level X's, primes, things like that. I've been buying a lot of mid-era collections. I sold off a few months ago a lot of my PSA 9 level X's and primes. My legend pieces all went to the PWCC vault to eventually be auctioned. So I've been trying to pick up raw collections that can partially fill up my Evo inventory at Troll and Toad, and then fill out my binder collections here. So that's mainly what I'm doing buying and selling wise. How about yourself?
I haven't been buying too much these past couple weeks. There have been a few good collections. A lot more for myself than for actual resale. Like I said, the two no damage nine tails. All the ETBs that I'm picking up from you. That's all going into my own collection. But as far as like resale purchases, I did pick up a small, or it looked like a decent lot, for 3,000. Had unlimited base set 2, Team Rocket, and Gym Challenge Charizard. That collection, which I'll show in a future video, that collection was a bit of a disappointment. I'm definitely not going to do as well with that collection as what I thought I was going to do, but that happens sometimes. And then I actually also just recently purchased a collection from a seller in Canada who I believe is also a viewer, because he knew who I was when I reached out to him through email. But I bought a complete unlimited base through Gym Challenge set from him, and the condition on those cards looks really good. So hopefully that's actually the case, because that other collection that I bought, those cards looked really good, but they turned out not to be really good. So hopefully this collection's in good shape, where I can grade all the hollows and then sell the non-hollow sets as being complete sets. Kind of save myself some work there. Plus, I already have a decent amount of all the individual commons and uncommons, so I think I'm just going to sell those as complete sets. But
yeah,
with that collection, that's kind of a good segue into our main topic for this podcast, because the story behind that collection was Z&G, or someone, I guess Z&G Emporium, found this collection on Reddit, or maybe the seller reached out to him. I don't know what it was, but James wasn't interested in that collection, so he sent me an email with what that collection entailed. Gave me the guy's email, all the pictures, so on and so forth. And so I reached out to the seller and basically offered $6,000 for this collection after kind of going back and forth with him for a bit. He was asking, I think he was asking $7,000 for everything. And I offered $6,000 for everything, and he said he was going to hold off right now because he thought he would be able to get closer to $7,000. So I said that's fine. Fast forward maybe a week or week and a half, he reaches back out to me and says someone offered him close to what he was asking, and he accepted. And then PSA shut down, so that original buyer backed out of the sale, because he was planning to do the same thing, submit all the cards into PSA, grade them, and then sell the graded copies. So when that buyer backed out, the seller reached out to me, asking if I was still interested. I said sure. So we ended up making a deal for $6,090. He covered the shipping, and then we split the PayPal fee. So I upped my offer a little bit there, but yeah, I think moving on to the main topic that we have of PSA shutting down. I think this will add opportunity for purchasing raw card collections, at least for the short-term future. I think we'll start to see more and more opportunities coming forward, just because people don't like submitting into these other grading companies, BGS, CGC. Some people just like submitting into PSA because that's, for the most part anyway, that's where you're going to get the highest premium. And so with PSA being shut down, there's the possibility of not as much competition within raw card collections for that reason, just because of the PSA being shut down and people not being able to submit through them. So I think that could be a positive right there. Maybe the one positive that comes out of this situation that we're in right now. What are your initial thoughts on that?
My first thought was, I initially was in shock. I knew things were really bad, but when they came out with that news of receiving more in 3 days than in how many months or how many weeks, whatever it was, it initially surprised me. But then as I really thought about it and made sense of it, it's like that makes perfect sense. Like, that's not surprising at all. I think it was way overdue. Not necessarily shutting down, but I've been saying for a long time on E4 that they should have increased prices substantially a long time ago. To be in the midst of a pandemic and a million card plus backlog this time last year,
yep.
And then to do a $7.50 quarterly special to try and entice more cards in, it's like, what are you guys doing? And it's crazy to think about, but just as recently as a month and a half ago, you could still submit cards for $10 a card, right? It was only March 1st that we went to 20 a card.
Yep.
That's just unbelievable. And then 1 month at $20 a card, and people knew that it wasn't sustainable. People knew that they were going to push it to 50 or whatever it's going to come back as. But yeah, I think there's definitely some opportunity as far as buying certain things raw, like you said. You can't really do anything to go back, and I'm sure tons of people are wishing they just piled cards into the backlog.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I'm still seeing some really strange takes on all of it, though. Facebook, Reddit, E4, even. Some people think that we're going to come back on July 1st, like they're projecting somehow, and they think it's going to be $20 a card still, or $10 a card again somehow. I don't know where you stand on this, but I am expecting I'm expecting bulk to not come back until well later than 7/1, July 1st. And I'm expecting it whenever it does come back, September, October, next January, who knows? I'm expecting it to be a $50 card floor. Not 2 years from now or 5 years from now, but for the next year or something while this backlog gets worked through. I don't see how they reopen it under $50 a card again, or the same thing's going to happen. Where do you stand on that?
So the way they worded the email or the announcement when they shut down was they said they wanted to gradually bring all tiers back, with everything being back open July 1st. So we know the bulk tier is going to be the last one to come back. And I'm kind of doubtful that they'll be caught up enough to bring that bulk tier back for July 1st.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be something similar to what you said, where it'll be late summer, early fall, somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
But it could be. It's tough to say. It's real tough to say, really. They do have a massive backlog, but they also have 3 months where they can kind of devote everyone that works there to getting this backlog caught up. They don't have to have people there registering new submissions or whatever. They can kind of just focus on what they have already, which is nice. And I'm kind of doubtful that they'll be fully reopened July 1st, but I kind of hope they will be, because I'd like to start sending some more cards off for sure, as I'm sure everyone would. But go ahead.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people do some like math. I didn't follow and I don't remember all the numbers off the top of my head, but late last year into early this year, they kind of shared some insight on how much they scaled up their employees and their office space and all that. And then, as I said in this most recent email, when they shut down the end of March, they mentioned that in 3 months they received, or 3 days they received more than the 3 months prior. I saw some people doing some detective work and trying to estimate how much that was. I don't know if it's right or not, but I feel like it could be multi-million cards in that 3 months or 3 days. Sorry. And if you just keep things in context, and if you go back and you just kind of take the numbers they provided before and extrapolate from there and kind of estimate, I think the very last cards that they took in on that third day, that had to be not for right now, because we don't know exactly what they scaled to, but like 2 years ago they were grading a couple million cards a year, I think, or a little over 1 million cards a year. In 3 days they took in multiple years worth of backlog as of a couple years ago. They've doubled, quadrupled, however much they've scaled up since then. But I honestly, I sent some stuff. I didn't send anything in March at all, but I sent some stuff very late February. I don't know if I expect to see it back until 2023. Honestly, like
2023, man.
I'm expecting a year and a half. I still don't have them back. I sent in 3 orders on their Pokemania last May. I don't have any of them back. One of them I just got my upcharges. So if you watch Graded Gem, if you've talked to Charlie with Ludkins, last May was like a surge because we just came out of the pandemic shutdown and people just threw stuff out there on the special.
Yep.
June was bigger than May. July was bigger than June. And it was just like exponential until and culminating in March. So like if you kind of try to plot that and figure it all out, in those 9 or 11 months from last April to this March, they took in so many cards. I mean, they multiplied their capacity, but they exponentially increased their backlog. And it'll be really interesting to see how they roll out these tiers. I expect that you'll be able to do something. Right now it's 300 a card. I think within a month or two you'll be able to do something for 100 or 150 a card again.
Yeah, I could see that.
But they're taking a good approach, and right now it's 300 a card. So it's been that for a week now, right? They'll
Yeah.
see how much they get in. Like right now, they know, someone at PSA should know we can grade X amount of cards a day. If they open up a tier for 200 and they get a surge of more cards submitted in a day than they can grade,
Mhm.
and any day that you get more cards in than you can push out, your backlog grows, right? So they
Exactly.
open up tiers. They open up tiers until they get close to there. And if they open up too many to where they go backwards again, immediately close it again. Like have it open for a day and close it, double the price, whatever. But to have a multi-year backlog is just absurd. And I don't know how they let it get this bad.
I have no idea there. That's yeah, I don't know how they let it just kind of snowball into what it is today.
Yeah.
Um with what you were saying about the pricing earlier though on the bulk cards, and then we'll kind of go back and talk about how they got to where they were. But with the pricing on the bulk cards, they did the increase from $10 a card to $20 a card. For March 1st, they did that increase.
Yep.
I honestly, whenever they do bring back the bulk service, like I said, I don't think it'll be July 1st, but whenever they do bring that bulk service back, I don't think they're going to increase prices right away. I think we're going to see that $20 price tag for at least a little while, just depending upon how quickly they get flooded with that new price. I don't think they really can raise their prices again. Right out of the gate though. I think they're going to stick with their $20 per card price. I would hate for it to happen, but I can see them going to 30 or $40 a card, maybe 50. I think 50 is a little bit too high, but 30 or 40 I can kind of see. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but it's a possibility for sure. Just because even with the like we only know or at least I only know the Pokemon market, but even like I created a bunch of first edition jungle and fossil commons and uncommons, and even PSA 9s I'm selling for $50 a piece.
Yeah.
So at that $40 per grading or $40 or $50 per card for grading bulk, you're still breaking or almost breaking even. You might be losing a little bit of money if they do raise prices that much, but it's not that much of a loss with the new pricing trends. It's kind of relatable to how it was back in the day when grading was $10 a card, yet these PSA 9 first edition commons and uncommons were only selling for $10 or $15. You were still just breaking even on those cards. So yeah, I can
That's
kind of see
that's
that.
exactly, I was going to bring up the same thing. That's kind of where in my mind I went to the $50 guess, just
Mhm.
because I was grading a lot back, like you said. I remember when PSA 10 common uncommon jungle and fossils were like 25 to 30, and that was a decent margin. I mean, you grade a dollar bulk card essentially. You get a 10, you make $15 after fees and everything. Like that's a 15x. That's pretty good. You're putting more money into it, and but that was a reasonable way to slowly move bulk. But now they fly off the shelves for the 9s at 50.
Oh yeah.
So in my mind, on a card that is that common and readily available in mint condition,
Hmm.
9s should lose money or barely break even.
Yeah.
Eights, eights and lower, you should absolutely lose money. And I sold some eights. I sold some eights for 20 or $30. I actually, towards the end of March, had they not shut down last week, I would have just sent 2,000 cards to PSA.
Yep.
at $20 a piece. So that's where, and I think it's healthy to have a little debate and not necessarily always agree on everything. But when you say that you think they'll come back open at $20 a card, just keeping in context what happened at the end of March, multi-million cards in 3 days, and now you've got everyone in the world, everyone sitting on cards, piling them up. If they are crazy enough to reopen it at $20 a card, I think they would see 5 million cards in a day. I mean, I'll have a couple thousand ready, and I'm nobody. I've got nothing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I don't know.
No,
I'm thinking $50 a card next January is the new bulk, or maybe they don't even, whether or not you want to call it bulk, but maybe they just get down to standard or regular, whatever they call it, and maybe bulk doesn't come back for a year or something. That would be functionally the same.
Yep. Yeah, I can see something like that happening before just their bottom bulk tier goes up in pricing. I can see them just delaying that, them restarting that tier until they're almost fully caught up. But another thing I wanted to add there was, with all the submissions that came in towards the end of March, I don't know how true it is or anything, but my thought process behind that was, a lot of people knew that PSA was going to increase pricing March 1st based off of Instagram post that Nat Turner put out. I don't know if you saw that one, but he did put out a post, or it was like a comment within a post where someone asked something about pricing with PSA, and he replied back, "You might want to get your cards in before March 1st." That's kind of where that whole March 1st price increase came from, at least as far as
I didn't even see that, but I heard a lot of speculation around then.
Yep. So my thinking is, so many people wanted to get their cards in before March 1st. Could it be that this wave of cards at the end of March was just people submitting cards the end of February, beginning of March? Whether that be just cards getting stuck in the mail, or people sending cards off to Graded Gem and Ludkins, and just their processing was behind. So these people submitted cards into Graded Gem, Ludkins, whatever middleman, and by the time Ludkins or Graded Gem, whatever, got the cards, the new price was already increased, yet they still wanted to submit these cards. So the middleman sent them to PSA at that point. I don't know. It'd be interesting to know how many people continue to submit cards at that $20 per tier versus how many of those cards were just kind of delayed shipments before the price increase.
I think a bunch of them could have been, but just the exponential increase, especially at the very tail end, I would think a lot of that had to just be like people projecting and seeing, hey, this is going to be $30 a card. So if we send out 10,000 cards, we just made $100,000 if the price goes up $10 a piece. Essentially, I mean, that's the way a lot of people are thinking about it. If I get 10,000 cards in the backlog and the price doubles, I just doubled my money. I essentially saving half the grading fee that I would in the future. I know that it's not the best way to think, really, but I kind of threw a lot of cards in the backlog the last year, and each price increase, I've kind of thought that way a little bit.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I wish I submitted more cards into them than I actually did. I did like 100 cards in November, 300 in December, and then another 200 or 300 in January and February. So it's a decent amount, but definitely have more that I'd like to submit through them.
Yeah, I have. That was actually one thing I was going to ask you. We've only really been touching on PSA. At some point, we'll pivot more, I think, to CGC and their updates, their price increase, and all that. But do you care to share how many you have? I mean, you kind of did for PSA, but how many do you have in PSA's backlog versus how many you have in CGC's backlog right now? And if any, BGS, SGC, any of the more exotic ones, I guess.
Exotic. So I just got back my 780 card submission from last summer. That was the bulk of the cards that I had there. I probably have another 600 or 700 cards at PSA right now, between smaller submissions that I sent off in November through February. And then for CGC, I think I have just over 1,000 cards there now, which my earliest submission into CGC was back in January, the beginning of January. So hopefully that one will be coming back some point soon.
Should be, hopefully.
I hope so. And then BGS, I will never grade a card through BGS. Absolutely hate their service. But yeah, no, I just use PSA and CGC. I do like we were actually talking for a minute about SGC on PokeGal's podcast, and I don't know too much about SGC, but I do like their cases. I like the like how it's got that black background. I do like that. But I also like CGC cases with the clear case. So for right now, I'm just gonna stick PSA and CGC.
Yeah, I did a BGS Express sub with like some staff Vivid Voltage Charizards and some other random things I had. I'm not crazy about them. I feel like, to me, for what I'm looking for, they're just a worse CGC personally.
Oh yeah.
And then PSA is PSA. They're the leader in Pokemon, at least, and I don't really necessarily like them and what they do, and I don't agree with most of their decisions. But I use them for market acceptance, and just the premium they draw. But as of right now, I have, as I mentioned, 3 subs from last May. Last May alone, I have almost 1,000 cards. And then I probably have 4,000 to 5,000 with PSA. And then in the past week and a half or so, because we'll get into this, but I'm anticipating CGC and also BGS to have the same price increases, turnaround time increases, both together, that PSA is undergoing. So I submitted almost 2,000 cards in the past week or 2 weeks to CGC, and I probably have about 4,000 or 5,000 there total as well. Just because, to me, and sub $10 a card is a no-brainer. I mean, right now they're $9 the base price without subgrades.
Yep.
And I guess I'll touch on this quickly. I graded originally with CGC without subgrades, and when I got them back, I was kind of disappointed. I like the idea of subgrades a lot, but to me, they feel expensive for what they are. I mean, they're grading the card anyways. They're encapsulating the card anyways.
Yep.
And as it stands today, they charge you $9 for the grading and $7 for the subgrading, the base, like the retail price. Feels like a really weird split. I'd rather they just charged 16 and mandated it, or if they charged 12 and a $4 upcharge or something. But the 2,000 cards I sent were primarily like sub $100 cards. It's hard to double your cost basis on that cheap of cards. So I sent those all out with subgrades, even though I told myself some time ago I would never grade without subgrades again.
Yep.
So their price increase kind of pushed me away from the subgrade part of it. At least anything above bulk is all going to be subgrades for me personally. But bulk tier is no subs for me for sure.
See, I'm not sure what to think about that. I was similar to you, where in the beginning, my first submission with CGC, I thought you kind of had to get the subgrades. Kind of not that you had to, but it made the label look a lot more.
That was the differentiator too.
What was that?
That was the differentiator too. If you're going with CGC, get the subgrades, because that's what makes them different, right? That was my thinking too.
Yep. And then I also thought that this was back when it was like $8 a card and $4 or $5 for the subgrades. I thought that people, if you had the same card, same grade, one with subgrades and one without subgrades, my logic was that people would be more willing to purchase and pay $4 or $5 extra for a copy with the subgrades versus not subgrades. That's kind of been my logic going all along. Yet I haven't actually received my first CGC submission, my first bulk submission through them. So I really can't put that theory to test to see how quickly CGC cards sell and at what price points they sell versus PSA cards. So for right now, I'm still doing subgrades for everything that I submit. And I think I'll probably continue doing that until I can kind of start selling my own cards, my own CGC graded cards, to see what how quickly they sell and how much they sell for, so on and so forth. Kind of get my own feel of the market, I guess.
One thing that kind of interests me, and I guess I was in love with the idea of subgrades at first, and then especially with the cheaper cards, I found more difficulty in selling. It's a 10 PSA 10 price and a PSA 9 price, but with CGC you get 9.5s with 4 9.5s, or with 2 9.5s and 2 10s. So in your mind you're thinking like, this is a strong one, I should get more for it, or this is a weaker one, I should price it a little less. So it's almost a little more effort to like think of the proper pricing. And maybe I'm overthinking it, but kind of what you were saying, where you think that you would achieve a premium, generally speaking. So one thing that I found, having sold some with subgrades, some without, I kind of think it goes either way, because if I sell a flat 9.5, they see a 9.5. They don't know if it's strong or weak. It's just kind of middle of the road.
Yeah.
Well, if you sell a 9.5 that's like the weakest they come, you're gonna get no premium over just a plain 9.5, from what I see, from what I think. But then on the opposite side, half the time you're gonna be strong, half the time you're gonna be weak. So it balances out, but it's a little more effort maybe. Yeah. That's kind of my thinking. That's why I'm moving away. Another thing is too, I don't know if you do it at all, but I've had like 20 PSA 9s of the same card before, and I've done a single listing with 20 quantity stock photo, and you can kind of do that easier without the subgrades. But again, if you do a stock photo listing and it's got 9.5 subgrades, and then you send one that has one subgrade lower, they're not going to be happy. I mean, you can't really get away with like the stock photo type listing with subgrades.
Yeah.
From what I see. So
yeah, no, that's a good point right there. You really have to do individual listings with cards that have the subgrades. It'd be tough to do just a single stock photo. I list all my PSA cards, at least for now, individually. That could change, but what's your kind of like your threshold for taking actual pictures, like for a dollar amount? Do you have any kind of like threshold where if it's above a certain dollar amount, then you'll take a front and back picture?
It's kind of fluctuated over the years, because naturally we've shot up in prices. So like a few years ago, a cheap card that didn't warrant extra photos, like anything under $25 would just be a stock photo from me.
Yeah.
But $25 2 years ago is like $100 now. So in my mind, 100 is like the threshold to me. Unfortunately, most of my inventory right now has subgrades, so I've gotta do the separate photo each time. But once I get back these 2,000 cards I just sent out, it's gonna be a lot of stock photos, because they're gonna be $30 to $100 cards, probably a lot of them.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah, no, I think 100. I'd say between 50 and 100 is fine for stock photos. I do 25 myself. On raw cards, it's 25. and then PSA cards. Anything under 50 is stock photos. Anything over 50 is front and back pictures. But I've also never had this many PSA cards like I do right now. Or I shouldn't say never, but it's been a long time. So I'm terrible about submitting. So that might change because it is a pain having to retake pictures every time you want to update the listing with the exact same card.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you quickly. Do sub $50 PSA cards still exist?
There's not too many of them. I got some of my PSA 8s and 8.5 first edition Jungle and Fossil commons and uncommons at like $30. So
Okay.
those
They do exist, Ben.
and speaking of the 8.5s, actually, I just uploaded my video on the
Oh, yeah.
those have actually been selling pretty well. I priced them, I listed them all between more towards, so like I took the PSA 8 price and I took the PSA 9 price, and I listed them more towards the PSA 8 prices just because I figured if I regraded them all, some would come back 8s, or the majority would come back 8s, some would come back 9s. So I just kind of priced them all between 8 and 9, leaning more towards 8. And those cards have actually been selling pretty decently. I've been quite surprised by the sale with how frequently those cards are selling.
That's good.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm not a fan of the 8.5 grade at PSA. At CGC, it's a different story because it's kind of algorithmically determined.
Mm-hmm.
But with PSA, it's like you get a bad day, and they'll just hit you with 8.5s. And there was a few month period a couple of years ago where they were coming out left and right on every submission, and then they just kind of disappeared again.
Yeah, and then I got them all back.
Yeah, I just had I haven't gotten it back like in my possession yet, but I did get the up charges for a PSA sub from last May. 400 cards. I think we were talking about it the other day. What was it, like 8 cards got 8.5 or something? Maybe it wasn't too many.
I think you were saying like 7 or 8. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you lucked out there. You're supposed to get all the 8.5s.
Yeah.
But no, with PSA's grading scale, that 8.5 is absolutely pointless. But with CGC, where they base their overall grade off of the subgrades, and it's kind of like what you were saying, how it's kind of like a math problem almost. It makes a lot more sense for them to have the 0.5s than PSA, where you're just getting that one overall grade. I really don't understand their half grades.
I don't think anyone does, including them. I've regraded a few, not a ton, but I've regraded a few dozen 8.5s, and I've never had one repeat at 8.5. And in my opinion, well, not, I don't even know if it's an opinion. If something isn't repeatable, it isn't valid. I mean, if you've got a scale that you're trying to weigh something on, and it's a different weight every time, that's not a valid measurement. That's not a valid scale. Same thing goes for grading. I mean, if they can't hit the same grade, and tens, you crack a 10, it's not always going to be a 10 again. You crack a 9, it's not always going to be a 9 again. But most times it's going to repeat and be the same. I mean, there's extreme examples, there's misgrades, but 8.5s are just, under any circumstance, like such a low portion of those are going to be repeatable because they just hand them out so erratically and infrequently.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the difference between an 8 and a 9 is so small anyway. How can you tell the difference between an 8 and an 8.5 and an 8.5 and a 9? That is such a, it's like the smallest nick or smallest speck of whiteness you're talking at that point.
Yeah.
So I don't understand that at all. But one thing I did want to mention, well, going back to your submission to CGC, was how do you think what's going to happen with CGC and BGS now that PSA is shut down?
I think I mentioned it briefly, and then I didn't really expand on it, but I foresee the same thing happening. In my opinion, any card that you want to have graded with CGC at any point, you're better off getting it out now,
Yep.
because I don't think prices are going to get cheaper anytime soon.
No.
Anything that you get into their backlog, you're locking in that pricing, and you may not see it for a year, because I know when I first submitted, late December, I think was my first submission to CGC. They were calling their bulk a 30 business day turnaround time at that point. And then while my cards were there, it went up to 90. And now they're at what, 111 is what they said most recently.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, but that, when I sent it, it was 30 day, and I didn't get it back for about 100. So right now, my thinking is, when you're sending to them and they're calling it 111, it might be 200 business days, which is pretty close to a year. I mean, and that was pre PSA closure.
Yep.
And I said earlier, I had about 2,000 cards I was going to send to PSA at 20 a piece, and I just sent them all to CGC.
Yep.
And I've got, if CGC's prices don't increase for the next few weeks or month, I've got a few thousand more I'm going to get out pretty quickly, and then maybe a couple thousand more. Who knows? I mean, I'll have to see how deep I can dig, what buys I make in between now and then. But in my mind, grading for sub $10 is just, it's it's a bad word to use, but like a guarantee, a no lose proposition. That's a very bad word to use, but it's as close as you can get, as long as you're grading something reasonable.
Yeah.
But I don't know what you've seen. I grade so many cards, like big 400 card submissions. You get the occasional 5, like maybe you bent it and you didn't notice. Maybe it was just busted out of the pack. But I've sold some oddball CGC 5, CGC 6, like common modern promos, and I'm getting $15 for them or something. It's like, I should be punished for those. I should lose money. And
Yep. Yep.
worst case scenario, like say that the card, I mean, CGC should just put them in the shredder if they're less than an 8 and it's a 10-cent modern card. But instead, I'm paying less than $10 to turn a 10-cent card into a $15 card. I'm barely breaking even after all the fees, but that's crazy. It's almost a no lose proposition.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah.
Where do you stand on that? Do you think CGC? I guess let me put like a firm number on it, just so I'm out there as having predicted it if I'm right. I think that by summer, CGC, their floor is going to be $25 to $30 a card. I might be way off on that. I might be. Sports is a lot of the problem, I think, and CGC might not have as big of adoption as I think they have, but I honestly think CGC is right on its way to $25 to $30 card floor.
Okay. Um, I can definitely, so with the submission part, I was definitely planning to do a large CGC submission this past weekend. But with Easter and everything, didn't get that to happen. So I'm definitely planning to do a large submission to CGC within the near future, because I completely agree with you. I think they're going to get absolutely flooded with cards within the next couple months or so. Just everyone that was going to submit to PSA is just going to submit to CGC now. At least I think so. So yeah, I think over the next couple months they're going to get absolutely flooded with cards, and they're just going to get more and more backed up as we go forward here. So definitely recommend submitting the CGC early if you're planning to. So, and as far as the pricing goes, we were talking about this on Messenger a couple days ago, where we were talking about CGC pricing and why haven't, with their ever expanding turnaround times and more people submitting to them, why haven't they raised prices quicker than they did in the past? And why haven't they raised those prices more than what they did? Because they just semi-recently raised prices, but it wasn't that much of an increase. It was
No.
$1 or $2 for the basic grading, and then it was like 2 or 3 for the subgrades, which was a little
Yep.
bit high, like you said, but it really wasn't that much of an increase. And my philosophy on that was, I don't think, where CGC is a brand new company, I don't think they could charge more than what PSA is charging. I think one of the advantages of CGC, at least for right now, is that they're cheaper than PSA. So if you're looking for that kind of cheaper alternative, CGC was the way to go. That was kind of one of their selling points, I guess you can call it. So I think they did have to charge at least a decent amount less than what PSA was charging. And up until recently, like we were saying, PSA was only charging $10 a card. So CGC really had to be less than $10 a card, in my opinion. And then
Mhm.
with the increase of PSA upping their price to $20 a card, I can see CGC increasing their price to between 10 and $15 a card, I'd say. But toss in the fact that PSA is now shut down and
Mhm.
really don't have that option anymore. I don't know. I really don't know what's going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if they did increase their pricing, but I do think they're going to stay below that $20 price tag, at least for now. But it'll be
It'll definitely be interesting to see. But right now, all they're up against is $300 a card. Is all they got to beat.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Now, do you think people will do you think there's going to be more people that send to CGC versus BGS?
It's hard to know for sure. I don't keep up with BGS pricing, but isn't their bulk pricing like isn't their base price over $20 a card already?
I honestly couldn't tell you at all.
I, I know one of their services is over 20. I mean, that's not saying much, but I feel like their base. I remember hearing 2 years ago of their non-guaranteed services taking over a year, and
Yep.
that was before all this insanity. So I can only imagine their backlog and their pricing is really substantial. Also, I it's not that I hate the cases or anything. I just two services feel like enough for me, and I like CGC's case better.
Yep.
And I think CGC is, I can't say they're past BGS already, but as far as modern Pokemon goes, I think they're substantially past BGS. And personally, I value them higher than BGS.
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. I've always so when CGC first got into the grading scene, I was really optimistic. Unfortunately, when they officially started accepting submissions, I had just left for my full-time job. So I couldn't submit anything till I got back to them. But I kind of kept up with CGC news, or whatever you want to call it, how their situation was playing out, and everything that I've seen, they've had a few hiccups here and there, but everything I've seen looks really good. I
Mhm.
absolutely think they're going to take away BGS's market share at some point down the line. It's going to take a while for them to establish themselves and all that, but I think it's going to be PSA number one. That's always going to be the case, and then CGC is going to take BGS's slot at some point down the road. I can absolutely see that happening for sure.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the people who it feels like a really hot topic, CGC versus PSA? My opinion is there's value in both of them. They both, if you want to do things the optimal way, you're using both of them. Even from the business side, I'm saying, and then even
Yep.
from the collecting side, like I think anybody who universally shuns one or the other is only doing a disservice to themselves from the business and or collecting side. Because I get that you want uniformity, and I get that you want all your cases to look the same, but like at the end of the day, you've got to realize that it's the cards that we're collecting, right? I mean,
Yep.
we haven't really gotten too much into this specifically, but I think even going back years ago, I feel like the plastic has always been overvalued. In the opinion, has always been overvalued, and it's only gotten worse over time.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I've kind of made a business out of buying raw cards, grading them, and selling them for a premium. I mean, it's not doing anything too special. It really blows my mind, some of these more modern cards and some of these more bulk cards, even vintage cards. A lot of times you're taking a $3 to $5 raw card, putting it in a case, and I know that there's a threshold there. There's a year backlog or several month backlog,
Yeah.
but they're turning into $50 cards. And I would just say that investors or flippers or businesses or collectors, you want to be on the selling side of that more than the buying, for a lot of these, especially ones that are readily available mint. Just be on the selling side of those ones.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But on the flip side of that, I think a big part of why people are willing to pay such a premium on those bulk type cards is because it's multiple factors, but I think one or a few of the factors are people who aren't super familiar with grading, in terms of like grading raw cards, where you're getting the third party's opinion on what the grade is. So you basically know it's a mint card, it's a near mint card, whatever the grade is. Plus, you're also getting the kind of guarantee that it's an authentic card. Where some people who are just getting into the hobby might not know how to determine that stuff yet. So I think that's a big part of why you see such a premium on graded cards versus raw cards.
Yeah, and I think years ago we mentioned grading 8s and 9s were a losing proposition.
Yep.
I think eventually we return more to a state like that, whether that's because the grading price goes up so much, or whether those values go down. I don't know which, most likely a little bit of both.
Yeah, I think it's gonna
But
be.
like if I had the ability to turn around a card in 2 months at PSA, clearly a lot of those commons and uncommons that you're selling for $50, that wouldn't be the case, because I would have sent 5,000 cards out just from Fossil and Jungle,
Yep.
and I would have crippled the market by myself. Within a 2-month turnaround time, and so those things will sort themselves out over time. The third party opinion is valuable and all that, but just make sure. I mean, there's a lot of things in the backlog that we're going to see work their way through,
Oh yeah,
and I feel like what a place I'm getting myself into mentally too often is like not so much FOMO, fear of missing out, but like I'm getting caught up in the hype, not FOMO, but feeling like I need to do things quicker than I actually need to. I mean, I've been back in the hobby now for six going on 7 years, and I plan to be here in 6 or 7, 10 or 20 years. I mean, I love the hobby. I love the franchise. I think people need to really think about their longer term plans and stop. And I'm speaking to myself here too. Like, stop stressing so much about the day to day and a month from now and a few months from now. Remember that if you're going to be, remember that you're going to be here in a few years, and be a little patient and let things play out, because Fossil and Jungle first edition commons and uncommons aren't going away. A lot of these more modern things, if you pick them up raw, I don't necessarily think 10 years from now, sometime between now and the next 5 to 10 years, more likely 1 to 5 years, things are going to calm down. A lot of people are going to leave the hobby, or maybe not leave, but be be more calm, be slowed down a little bit, and we'll all be able to catch up.
Yeah, for sure. That's one of my biggest downsides, I guess, for my own collection. I'm terrible about that whole like thrill of the hunt type of thing. When I start a
But
new collection, I want to finish it immediately.
certain things you're after, though, like what I'm saying applies more to the really mass produced, really out there and high quantity mint
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
When you're looking for legendary collection sealed theme deck cases, nothing I just said applies. I mean, I'm not saying go out and spend a 10x record over the last sale, but like I'm not talking about that kind of niche, obscure, lower print run sealed stuff. I mean, quantity of that only goes down over time, so
Yeah.
the clock is ticking on that stuff.
Well, I know what I'm going to be doing tonight.
Yeah.
No, but that's a good point there. Is to just have patience and build up slowly. That was actually something that I kind of getting off topic here a bit, but that was actually something that I was terrible about back in the beginning when I was first getting back started with selling and collecting back in 2016. Was I'd look at people like you, Rusty, Scott, Gary, and see what they had versus what I had, and I always wanted to be in a similar position as what they have. And obviously, even today, I'm not quite there yet, but it's my opinion of myself has gotten a lot better. Where it's not a competition of having as much or as good of a collection as someone else versus just how much you actually enjoy your own stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have anything else? We had so what's the last thing that I had on here was the future of grading. And
Yeah.
you put in potential for AI grading. And then I guess
that's one thing that I don't know your thoughts on it, but one thing I commonly see suggested, as if it's a reasonable suggestion, and I don't mean to be too negative or anything, but people say we should just start a grading company. We should just use AI. We should just have something that could scale indefinitely with whatever demand, whatever exponential demand's coming. If we're using robots and it's all automated, we can just scale it, take people out of it. I've heard people talk about having just, I was talking on reproducibility a little bit earlier, and 100% reproducibility every grade all the time. And I mean, we've landed people on the moon, and we can do a lot of really great technological things, but I think people are oversimplifying what it would entail as far as establishing like a fully automated artificial intelligence, robotic, laser, whatever grading system. I don't think it's plausible at all.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
Maybe 20, 50, 100 years from now, maybe in our lifetimes, maybe 20, 50 years from now, quantum computing, some crazy AI breakthroughs, but I don't see it happening in the next 10 to 20 years minimum. Like, I think we're so far from that. And I mean, certain things, centering could certainly be some kind of a program to scan it. But even that, like, my mind, when I think of a Pokemon card, it goes right back to WotC. The yellow borders, you look for the evenness all around. Yep. But look at some of these modern cards, all that texture, the e-reader cards having the different borders, and you've got to create databases of tens of thousands of cards that this AI system is going to recognize and know what ink's supposed to be where and where it's not supposed to be, and the variations in the foil patterns. And I mean, and if you're getting crazy enough on an atomic level or on a very fine level, like finer than our eyes can even see, every card is imperfect to some extent. PSA 10s are not perfect cards.
Exactly.
So AI grading, there's so many flaws with it. At the end of the day, say that this system existed, you still need, some human still needs to set the thresholds for what's acceptable as far as off-centeredness. Because at an atomic level, every card essentially is off-centered one way or the other.
Yeah.
What do we deem acceptable? So there's going to be no perfect system ever. And I kind of rambled on and kind of ranted there a lot. What's your take on all that?
No, I completely agree with you there. I think the biggest things that I was going to bring up were like what you said with the PSA 10s. You at some level you have some minor imperfection there, and I think if AI grading took over, you'd almost have no 10s out there. 10s would be impossible to get, I feel like. Um, just because even within a 10 you have some minor type of damage, which is acceptable. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up with AI grading was the whole like eye appeal aspect of cards. Like, I know if you look on PWCC's listings on eBay, they have an example of, I forget what card. It's like Hank Aaron or Mickey Mantle or some baseball card, and they have like 5 examples, all PSA 5 graded, and
Yep.
it goes based off of the eye appeal, and it's got the worst one on the left and then the best one on the right, and they're all PSA 5s, but the one on the left looks a lot worse than the one on the right. And how's a machine going to be able to tell that, yeah, all four or five of those cards are the same grade, yet they all do look so much different.
Yeah. And at the end of the day too, like one difference between PSA and CGC, I've graded a lot of Masaki cards. Going back to the Masaki mark is an auto PSA 6 essentially. With CGC, I've been finding that you can get CGC 7 to CGC 8 depending on how faint or how strong the Masaki mark is. This theoretical AI grading company, some human needs to set the parameters for. I mean, look at WotC. I just opened a fossil box. Some of those have that weird corner. I don't even know what you'd call it, or it's not like damage really. It's just something in the production. It's a oddly cut corner,
Mm-hmm.
and you got a human has to set the subjective how that affects eye appeal, and they need to set like the thresholds for this AI to grade it on, and that's going to vary by person. And I'm a guy who I'm big on centering, I'm big on foil condition.
Yep.
So like issues on the back, to me, there are some PSA 8s that I prefer over other PSA 10s. I'd rather have a pack fresh PSA 8 with a clean hollow that's centered with 4 or 5 specks of white on the back than a PSA 10 that's 60-40 off center.
Oh
A
yeah.
lot of times, because for me, I take in the card from the front, and I want a clean centered front, and what's going on in the back, I don't really care.
Yeah.
So even with this perfect, fully capable AI grading system, unless you have 1,000-point scale where literally every card is just graded on 100 metrics from 1 to 10 or 10 metrics from 1 to 100, and people aren't going to like that because then they're not going to be able to get a perfect card
Yeah.
because they
Exactly.
don't exist. I mean, it's people like to talk about it, I guess, and think as if it is a potential future paradise that we can all live in and grade our cards through them, but I don't see it.
No, not for a really long time. I
Yeah.
can't see that changing at any point soon.
Yeah.
Well, do you have anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I think we hit everything. I think we ran a little bit over our goal of around an hour, but I think we covered a lot and hopefully had some interesting content for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think this was we were going to do our, hopefully, next week's topic this week, but with the news from PSA coming out, I think it was a good topic to do today, versus waiting on it, because it is a major topic. Definitely
Yeah.
major. because that's never happened before. That's a first right there. PSA actually shutting down and refusing submissions.
We did have the very brief for the pandemic last year,
I forgot about that.
but
Yeah,
that was external and that was very short duration. This is going to be longer, and I think that this can fundamentally change a lot of things about the hobby over the next few months, depending on if I'm right and we don't see sub $50 a card, or if we see it soon. I mean, a lot of things hinge on the availability of third party authenticators. So it'll be interesting to see. As I said, we get so caught up in the day to day and the week to week. I'm here for the next decade or more. I mean, decades, hopefully.
Yep.
So I'm interested to see how it all plays out, and I'm sure we'll look back on this year long period, and just we're gonna all remember this.
Oh yeah, definitely, for sure. Well, it's been nice chatting with you. That was a fun episode. Hopefully,
Yep.
Hopefully you guys listening or watching enjoyed it as well. And if you have a question, definitely leave it below in the comment section. And like I said in the beginning of the episode, we'll, depending upon how many questions there are, we'll pick the top couple of questions and give you our input or our answers to those questions. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this little podcast, and we will see you in the next one. It's been nice talking to you, Dan.
Yeah, be sure to like and subscribe if you liked what you saw and you want to see more of it. And as Nick said, leave a comment down below, and we'll catch you all later. It was a good time talking to you.